Hi, hello everyone. My name is Diana Combo. I am the Music and Sound Arts Curator at Teatro do Bairro Alto, TBA. Welcome to today's music conference, Heya, Feminist Networked Co-Creation between Europe and the Middle East, that will be presented by Jilliene Sellner and Zeynep Ayşe Hatipoğlu. I take the chance to greet our guests. Hello and welcome. Merhaba, hoş geldin. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation. Even before having a logo or a phone number, TBA started online. Over the past year, we have told the story of this new Lisbon theater through photographs, videos, sound plays, and conferences. In the beginning, it was the way we found to start existing because our venue was not yet open. Here, online, we continued. And today, as in most parts of the world, this is where we can be. TBA relates itself with several artistic areas and also the discourse surrounding the practices. For this very reason, the Music and Sound Arts program has offered formats that go beyond the experience of a concert. It is in this context and in relation to the special moment that we live that we present this conference today that will let us know about a proposal that uses sound and music to draw attention to human rights and freedom of speech. Today's presentation and live discussion aims to introduce our audience to Heya, a research project by Jilliene Sellner that is based in sound and music made by women whose sonic expressions include experimental music, soundscape, and noise, and the relationship with their practice, location, and activism. The method of research is co-creation and live network performance. It is the live network jamming and performance element that this discussion will focus on, how it can be used for creatives, and aside from that, how it highlights gender and socioeconomic differences depending on geographic location. Jilliene Sellner is an artist and researcher from Canada, based in the UK. This is where Jilliene is at the moment. Jilliene has composed sound for several international artists' video work and provides training for non-profit organizations and activists in podcasting. Her practice concentrates on collaboration, phonography, composing for installation, radio and video, and curating, producing live network performances. And from Istanbul, we have Zeynep Ayşe Hatipoğlu, a cello player and composer. As a composer and performer, Ayşe is collaborating with musicians and artists from other areas, mostly involved in improvisation practices. Ayşe is an active member of a couple of ensembles, and she is co-creator of the project that we are presenting today. So I now give the word to our guests, and I remind our audience that you can pose questions along the way that we will have the opportunity to answer after the presentation.
Shall I begin? Okay. So Heya, this is the Arabic script basically, which means she. This is the sort of formal title of the research project. It's Women, Networks, and Experimental Music and Sound, Art in Cairo, Tehran, and Istanbul and Beirut. I hadn't involved Istanbul originally because I thought I already had this very broad spectrum of locations and contexts to talk about, but at the moment, Iran is quite difficult to work with. I'll talk about that later. And I met Ayşe, and so I think that there are a few reasons why that would work really well, actually. So Heya is actually means she, but it's also in Arabic, and in English it's we say Heya, but it's just a friendly greeting in English, and it seemed inappropriate. I sort of asked a lot of Arabic speakers about it, and they thought it was a great sort of title to communicate with an Arabic speaking and also Persian and English audience. So it's a collaborative practice-based research, and I'm taking this approach, this method, as a way to investigate these different contexts that I'm not familiar with, um, to sort of look from within the group rather than from above or outside, which is sort of the usual, not the usual, but is a traditional academic standpoint, especially in musicology or ethnomusicology, for example. Obviously, that's changing a lot now. But so by co-creating with my colleagues, no one is in charge, and no one is necessarily leading it. I tend to do the groundwork for projects, but when it comes to the actual creative process, we're working together as a group, and it's not led by me at all. And we are, yeah, so I'm looking at regularly finding platforms for us to perform together and using live networking. And this is a way to overcome the difficulties in freedom of movement for some people in various different locations. For various reasons, such as, the cost, if we have funding to have someone come to Europe, for example, then that's great, but they might not be able to get a visa to do so. They might not be able to get permission from their home country to do that. So the live networking, it has its issues, major issues, and it's difficult, but it does allow for us to work together without actually having to leave our home country. And obviously now that is for everybody, which we'll talk about in a bit. I think the reason that I started to work on this project specifically and look at the Middle East is I had always been involved in and interested in music outside of sort of European tradition or North American tradition. So I was DJing and podcasting music from a lot of Mediterranean-based music, and that included Middle Eastern music, and often sort of women-led projects as well. And when I started to do my own creative sound work, I was actually looking for people to network with, and I just noticed that they were all white and from Europe or North America, and I was looking for texts and resources about women outside of these areas, these geographies, and I couldn't find anything at all. Maybe one resource. So then I had to dig a little bit more, and that's how I ended up with looking at this region. And I think the research is a way to, very simply put, broaden people's understanding of women in the Middle East in various contexts, totally disparate, different contexts, within music, electronic music, experimental music, and also in technology, and to relate them as individuals and not, as the other, and address visual representations of women in general, but also women of color, and from different regions within those areas of music and technology. So it is problematic because it tends to be, you have this old black and white photographs of women who are early in electronic music, but they're sort of treated as exceptional circumstances, and that hasn't continued, where there are thousands of women doing this. And I think that there are many women in the Middle East who are also practicing these types of musics and sounds, but they're not, I don't think they're necessarily exceptional in that they're different than anyone else. So this is a sort of a couple snapshots of a live jam that I did with Nour Skhon, who's in Beirut, for a Sound in Motion conference in Switzerland in 2019. And this is just some of the text between us. We were using Facebook Messenger to talk because she couldn't hear me. I could hear her, but she couldn't hear me, and that's one of the technical issues. And it's very panicky. And that is kind of the nature of how this goes. So a lot of the time, at least one person can't actually hear everybody else because of the platforms we've been using to try and have a better sort of sound quality. So not just using Zoom, for example. Yeah. So we're sort of just going, is it working? Is it working? And this is just a little bit of that.
I hope you can hear me.
So she can't necessarily hear. She can't hear me. She definitely can't hear me. So that was just a so you might not have been able to hear me. There was a juxtaposition of the sounds that we were both using, sort of field recordings and process field recordings, over top of the different locations. So Beirut, where Nour is, and Hastings, where I am in the UK. And then we had another commission in January through Radio Kunst-Orff and Deutschland Radio Kultur and Kunstradio. And it was a networked performance live in January, excuse me, between Vienna, Beirut, Cairo, and Istanbul. And this was different because we originally were going to include Tehran, but the riots were, well, not riots, some revolutionary moments were happening there. So I asked Ayşe if she would stand in. And the difference with this one was also that we used the European satellites to link Vienna and Berlin, which was another, so like all of this is very experimental, and they're like actual experiments. So that made it even this other unknown element, which we didn't know about whether it would work or not. I'm not going to play the clip because there's something wrong with the clip, and it did turn out very noisy. I didn't have any control over the levels actually, and those are the sort of technical issues you have when you're using all this technology that I have no control over, basically. So this is the on the left you have the room that I was in, this beautiful radio hall, and I was wanting to contrast that sort of where Ayşe and Yara Mekawei, who's in Cairo, was another one of our colleagues who participated in that performance. They were, Nour happened to be in Germany at the time, so she was in Berlin at Savi, a very well-known musical institution, and I was at this amazing hall, and so we were in Europe. Yara couldn't get a visa to come and do the Vienna project because I had actually wanted her to be the person in Vienna. But I also wanted to just show the contrast of sort of the places that we are in. So Ayşe and Yara were in rooms in their hometowns, basically, and we were lucky enough to be in these halls. And this is a recent live jam between me and Ayşe. I'll just sort of finish up with this, that we did, just to give you another sort of idea of the audio of what the sort of things we're doing. And also, I think Ayşe couldn't hear me in that one either. No, she could hear me, but not speaking. We couldn't communicate through words.
Yeah.
We have to communicate through sound.
Yeah. And also, I don't have the camera, so I log on with 2 different accounts. That's why you see 2 Ayşe there.
Yeah. So we have to always play with the technical side of things to make it work. But it's a lot of listening to each other, basically. It's almost like a call and response. I mean, it's improv, but it's that's the thing that we're learning, is to listen to each other. And that's it from that.
I will take the chance to pose you a couple of questions, because I came close to your project, maybe a bit more than most of our audience. So in order to go deeper, and because curiosity, is also very present, I take the chance to ask, how did you come together, you, Jilliene, and Ayşe, but also with the other artists that are featured in, when someone visits your website, the project's website, we find other names. So how this group, or let's say this first layer of group, was formed?
Ayşe and I met in August this last year at a residency in Germany called Field Kitchen. And the others, Nour and Yara, are active participants, Nour in particular, I think, of Tzitzit Fly Middle East, which is a platform that provides a space for Middle Eastern artists, particularly experimental artists, I think, to be played on a podcast. And I think sometimes they have done live shows in London and so on. And I actually just came across their names, listened to their what they were doing, and just approached them that way. So it's sort of me seeking out in that way. So.
And one thing that you mentioned, and it's very clear from the beginning, it's the technical challenges of the project. So it might sound weird that a project that is a sound and musical project has to face so many challenges, and in the end, you don't know very well what is happening and how is the audience experiencing it. And I remember that we were talking, the three of us, preparing this conference, and an idea came to my mind that we could talk about it. It's like suddenly we have all this tech knowledge and also musical knowledge. It's I'm not talking with women that have no idea of what they are doing, but they are exposed to these technical challenges no matter what. And it is my impression that at the moment, these technical challenges that can be overcome, but as they are at the moment, they are a very important trace of the activism of this project, because you make Kia makes some voices audible, and some energies can be put together even remotely. And can you both tell us, for instance, who do you think can be more open to these technical challenges, and how today's situation might open up other people to embrace this challenge and do whatever they think they have to do?
Well, I can. Do you want to start?
You can start, Jill. I love when you're speaking.
I think people will be probably more open now because everybody's experiencing the same situation, and you will have seen musicians all over the world trying to jam together using Zoom. On female pressure, there's quite a long conversation about different ways to connect to each other to get the best sound. And I think that's probably happening all over. I mean, people were working on this kind of networked project, making music together before, decades they've been doing this. But there's always this latency issue, and that is just in the West. I think, and on top of that, you have not just latency, but reliable internet or electricity issues in places outside of the West. They don't have that infrastructure. So I think it's partly to do, people want to do it, but can they? It might not be in their control how easy it would be to do, but there are ways to do it. And I think for experimental music is the perfect music for it, because you don't have a beat that you have to keep to, for one thing. And if you're improvising in that way, you're just listening to each other. And if there is a delay of a few seconds, even, I mean, it should be less than that, but it's okay in that kind of context. But yeah, I think more people will be open to imperfect performance and jamming now.
Yeah, hello everyone again. So from my side, when we experienced our project online, that was a really new thing for me. I was trying to find the best place to find a good internet. I go to university, for instance. I want to be everything as good as it can be. But for now, we are at home, and that's all we can. So I see that still the internet is working. Maybe on that time, I was more excited how it's gonna be, and I was curious. But then I met online with Nour and Yara, and I feel very comfortable with all of them, because I think we all have the feeling that we are enjoying the process. All the difficulties and challenges are as a part of the process. We are not just connecting to the final performance or our final thing. We're just trying to listen each other very well, and just taking all the difficulties as a part of it. So I think that's the most important thing. And we also, I think from now also we learn, we had a different hearing experience. We with the online sessions, we try to hear each other from distance, but we are more concentrated, and we give places to each other, spaces to each other. I think that's all these things are very related to like experimental approach that we all have in this project. We are all open to like spontaneity and like the everything. We accept everything. We don't see anything as a fault or wrong.
I hope you don't listen to my computer's fan as a fault. I tried to overcome this technical challenge, but the conference was more important than this. So this is probably just a personal comment, but I think it comes in a good moment of our conversation. I'm a woman, or at least I'm not a man, and I'm not considered to be in a very developed country if we consider different perspectives. But I feel I'm in a safe place. I feel I have a word to say, and I feel that my way is quite open. Although we can think about the difficulties of making music as a woman in Portugal or in Spain or in similar countries. But anyway, I think I have a lot to prove every time I'm performing. I have to prove myself to a sound technician. I have to prove myself to an audience. I have to prove that I know what I'm doing. I have to prove that I have knowledge and that I know how to work well with my tools. And suddenly we have a group of women facing these technological challenges that know will mark the piece, the work itself, that they might consider to be people who have no idea what they are doing. So for me, it is as punk as we can be, as do-it-yourself as we can do, which makes me very happy to know that some people go for it anyway, no matter what. And it's not about to prove how good we are with our instruments. It's just that we can go further, and it makes sense today, because even more than ever, I guess, for people who might feel themselves as a privileged one, because I realize that we might be more empathetic at the moment with what silence means, what silence by other people means to us. And also this can be a moment to reflect about it. And if those are the platforms that we have at the moment, if we don't face the challenges and if we don't face imperfection as something that is the only thing certain, we would stop doing things. And even us in a privileged situation, let's say, we would stop doing things, or we would edit everything really beautifully so we could still prove that we know what we are doing, and that the final piece of work is what is interesting. But this is also here is about putting people in relation. And I don't know, it came to me, do you think this collective experience of confinement will make people more empathetic to what's happening in countries that we might know more or less, but we don't know so much?
I'm not sure about that. I would like to think that. I mean, from the perspective of where I am in the UK, everybody is very wrapped up in their own problems. Perhaps the artistic community in the long run will be more empathetic about the technical side and glitching and things like that. I do think that those mistakes and glitches have always been, I mean, there's a quote from Tara Rogers' book, Pink Noise, I think it's in, about, glitch made by a man is seen as some sort of act of genius, and so I think it still comes down to gender inequality. I don't know. In terms of geographies, we're talking about two different aspects here. It's the gender, feminist issues, and also geographies and politics and context. I don't know if we're talking people opening their mind to those things. I guess it depends what people. And yes, these projects are. I mean, this is important for us to be doing this now and talking about this, so that people can, consider that, the lack of freedom of movement, not having reliable internet or electricity, etc., heating when it's necessary, is not having those things is normal for a lot of people all the time. And so when you are trying to do creative work, it is often not perfect if you can't be in person, particularly, and you might not be able to get somewhere that you need to, even if it's within your own city. We had that issue as well. But I hope that people will open their minds and be more empathetic. I don't know. What do you think, Ayşe, about this?
Yeah, the current situation, like as I say before, like I think it's somehow open up like a new kind of listening to each other and hearing. But in general, it is not easy to say that now all the geographies and all the world are having the common feeling. Some part, yes, it is, but in general, I don't know. The things will not change very quickly.
Because there's also this possibility that although during the first period of a collective confinement, we might have similar feelings. I know the experience of confinement can be so different from person to person, from location to location, but somehow there was something that we can grasp that was touching everyone in a way. But we never know if this leads to a more empathetic view, or if this will actually lead to the opposite side of reinforcing the other as other, to reinforce borders, because we might think that now the best we can do is to protect ourselves. So, of course, we cannot predict the future, but we do it every day. And at least in me, in myself, within myself, like it exists both wishes and fears. Like I wish for something to happen, but I fear, according to what I already know about the world, that something else can also happen, or that oblivion can also happen. That's something that we are feeling with so much intensity nowadays will just die because we will go back, we are not going back, we go further, but we go back to an experience that it's not so intense anymore, so we might forget of what we have just experienced. So maybe we will find out, sooner than later, we will find many things. As my neighbor just said yesterday, next week we will find out why this happened. And he said, you just go to the church, and this was God to clean the environment so he could send Jesus for the second time. This is his perspective, so I don't know, maybe next week we'll find out. But I certainly hope that we can reflect, and we can reflect collectively. I just wanted say to our audience that might not be aware, you were mentioning, Ayşe, that you were going to the university, you were hoping to go to the university to get a better connection for today's conference, but you are celebrating a holiday that marks the end of Ramadan, so you are in a very specific lockdown, so you couldn't really go, which is already a very, very different experience from what we are living in Portugal. Now we are not foreseeing a lockdown like that at the moment, but we are experiencing the first steps of going out and opening schools, and yeah. But on the cultural side of things, since a venue is a place that gathers people, we are facing, of course, Teatro do Bairro Alto, as other theaters, other venues around the world. We are facing this this question about what to do, and we know that we are going to deal, at least during a while, with a very limited number of people that can come in, and this is obviously a question. But I'm on the experimental side of things, so I see it as very positive in a way, because we don't have to worry that much to fulfill a room. We can take much more risks. So, and I realized that the experimental projects during this period of confinement were having the strongest voice, because people knew how to act. They have the tools. They embrace the challenges, and so it was like a perfect, I would say, or a much better scenario for certain projects to start and to exist without the feeling that they were missing something. Because some projects, I believe, if they are adapt to the online situation, since they were not created to that domain, they will probably use the platforms that you're using, but just for transmitting. And I don't know, also sooner or later, this transmission element can be very tiring, because we will just have everything in the same screen, just as something that could happen in a different way. So maybe I think that more projects that are thought for this can emerge and can gain strength. Also because people will probably give more attention to them. This is where we can be at the moment. It's online. I don't know if you want to comment and something else. I could pose many questions, but I would also like to hear from you. Comments, experience, thoughts, whatever you can tell us.
I was, noticing, obviously, when we're talking about borders, that right now there's so much online content that's free, which has been great for me because I don't live in London, so I don't really get to see a lot of bigger names. So Cafe Auto, for example, did a week, I think, at the very beginning, when it was quite an interesting mood, but it was pretty intense and really nice to experience Cafe Auto again. But there's regularly things like this going on, conferences. I saw Bruno Latour talking to, oh gosh, I can't remember who he's talking to, but this great minds are available suddenly as well to, like us, to experience live, and their discussions. You would have to go to a conference maybe for that, and so much experimental music going on, and unexpected all over the world. I watched something in Iceland the other night and something in London, obviously from people's houses, but some of it isn't great, but it doesn't matter. That is the punk side of it, I think. I think also that institutions and galleries and theaters will probably have to adapt and find different ways to present, because they were, in maybe presenting from different spaces with small groups of people or something. But I think people will be open to being the audience for that, because we still need culture and we still want to see things. And in a way, it's been quite fascinating seeing people working from their living rooms as well. So, but yeah.
Yeah, I have a question from the audience, but I would like to comment what you just said, because I remember talking to my team at Teatro do Bairro Alto, saying that wherever we are creating now, like this group of proposals that are in a way related to what we are doing now, makes us closer to an audience that for one reason or the other wouldn't be anyway able to join us in Lisbon. And I feel that this is a relationship, a commitment that I would like to continue, and this maybe will probably make that oblivion won't happen, because now we have these people that are with us. So I'm gonna pose the first question, and it's to Ayşe. Someone asks, how did the confinement make it more difficult, the experience of making music in Turkey? What are your thoughts about this?
Okay. I can say that, okay, I'm living in Istanbul, so first of all, it's really, really different than general Turkey. And so, especially in regard of like gender equality. So, in Turkey and in Middle East, still we can say that the art and music sciences quite limited. So this is also, of course, reflect to the again that equality issue. So in Istanbul, like in the academy and in the new music, experimental music scene, we have a very small community which support each other very, very well. And rather than Istanbul, in other big cities in Turkey, there are also like this kind of small communities which support each other. And in those places, we feel we are all feeling comfortable. But when we look at from a wide perspective, it is very limited. So the difficulties are, in general, it is difficult to find a place to perform or support. This is still not very easy. But yeah, this kind of online practices, it is, I think, also so nice that we can perform in a wider range.
It seems to me that sometimes when we are talking about the environment where we are sometimes even more friendly about what's going on, because I say this when I was living in Berlin, the musicians from Turkey that were there, they were really critical voices about what was happening in their home countries, because they could realize how difficult it was there and how not so difficult it is at the moment where they are. And it also makes me think that we do what we do no matter what, no matter how difficult things are. But of course, we are conscious about the difficulties that we go through, especially when we are in touch with other people that can share different experiences. I have a question, and maybe for Jilliene, who created this research, this project. The question is, do you foresee here having another type of future beyond the digital one?
I sure hope so. I mean, originally the plan was to, originally I started to initiate these networked jam sessions, partly also as a preparation to go to Beirut, Cairo, probably not Tehran. I'd love to go there, but I don't feel that, this is my pre-COVID thinking, and Istanbul. Through the preparations for the performance in January for Art's Birthday in Vienna, Berlin, we discussing the various locations that we might be able to be together. It became clear that Istanbul was definitely ticked a lot of boxes because my other colleagues in the Middle East would most likely, or they definitely don't need visas to go to Turkey. So, and the infrastructure in Turkey is relatively stable, I think, especially if we were in a theater or a university type theater or something. So that has been the plan sort of more recently. Now, I don't know when that's going to happen. But I'm definitely hoping that that will happen maybe in 2 years' time, that we would have a concert together in a room. And obviously there may be more people, hopefully more people will be involved in the project by then as well. So, we have these, the 4 of us at the moment. I hope that will grow so that we can have different people working together at different times. Maybe not, I would just be sort of producing it or making it, providing a platform for other people to be working together. There is an issue with, so a lot of us do quite similar work. So if you're jamming together, it doesn't necessarily work so well. So trying to bring in different types of work so that the sound can be a bit more balanced in different ways. But yeah, definitely looking at a real life concert one day in Istanbul, I hope.
Well,
yes, looking forward.
I'm sorry that I take.
No, just.
But I was just saying, we still say in real life, but we cannot say anymore that the offline or the online is not real life. It's both layers are part of what our reality is, and Heya combines this. I mean, you might have problems with borders, but you can always have a layer of the project that is, let's say, in real life because it's not online, but it's always connected with the online. So it's very intermingled, I would say, our real life.
I also think, being sort of in terms of the experience of a performer, or I don't really consider myself a performer personally, but as someone who makes sound and making sound with other people and jamming and doing that kind of creative process is very different in person. And regardless of the audience situation, for me, the important part is actually us to be together and to do it that way, because you have different ways of communicating, obviously, when you're in person through gestures or facial expressions and things like that.
Ayşe, you were saying something and I interrupted you.
Yeah, just I was just saying, looking forward to it, because of course we are having like great experiences in online sessions, but we are also really looking forward to come together. That's another. I won't say that's the real thing, but that's that's a totally different experience. So I hope we can do it soon.
As I hope I can meet you in person as well, and I can imagine how strong that experience could be. But I won't forget that we met here in the online, and this was the only way we had to meet. And I can also not forget, because it was so strong, the feeling that I had about our encounters and how close I felt that we were, not just because the ideas and the values that we were sharing, but maybe when we feel that we are not being provided of something that was usual before, we embrace things in a different way. So of course, it would be amazing to meet you in that real life domain. And before closing our session, I'm checking more questions that we all have from the audience. And I throw and the questions, and you can choose who is going to answer. And one question says, how do you see traditional live performance? And we now have to distinguish traditional and virtual. There is no longer a default live performance. What will change? Will we as performance or audience cherish it more? I don't know if this was very clear.
I think I understand.
Yes? Okay.
I think we will cherish it more when we are in real life, in the same room, in the same space together. I think when that is more possible, I think there will be a generation of people who will remember having to. I mean, also it depends how long this goes on, you know. But I think people. I mean, I'm already dying to be in a pub, and also to or go to a concert. I think people will always, having experienced this, knowing what it's like to be seeing live music in person, and also playing live in person. People have experienced this isolation. I can't imagine we would ever forget it. It's so intense, even if it lasts only another 2 months or whatever. I think it has been so intense and global. People will be writing about it for years and decades to come. We will be singing songs about it on stage together, probably.
And one more question that I think you mentioned already, but here we go. I've noticed you have 3 featured artists on your Heya website, which is great. Do you envision enlarging this group? And if so, within which criteria of selection? Would love to become aware of more artists. And I would love to become aware of the criteria so I can know if I can join or not.
Get in touch.
That's great.
Email me. There isn't really criteria, except I was interested in women in those regions that were doing experimental music. I think that is the criteria. But I'm not. I think we are open to different types of instruments, definitely different types of creative work in sound. I imagine that we'll probably work with women who are maybe not still in their countries of birth. So maybe if they're from Iran, for example, and they have left, I have a couple artists in mind that I'd like to work with for us to bring in, and so it's not really strong criteria, except that they're women, I guess, and from those regions originally, and have that experience of that geography, and cultural experiences there.
And also, sorry, Diane.
No, we're. And I have one question for you then.
We are now getting more comfortable. I think we're just, we were very new to this connection from online, but now we get used to it. So I think things will move more easily, I can say, and it will get wider soon because we passed all that difficulties and challenges. Mostly.
We will face new ones, I'm sure.
Yeah, for sure, yeah.
Someone is asking, and Ayşe, you will have to be the one answering to this one.
Okay, I will try.
Yes. Which Turkish women, composers, performers, are not being given enough attention outside or even inside Turkey, and that we absolutely need to know about? Any hints?
Can you ask again? I'm very sorry. Which women composers in Turkey?
So which Turkish women composers / performers are not being given enough attention outside or even inside Turkey, and that we absolutely need to know about?
Okay. I think there is not a strict thing like that, I can say. Of course, it depends on the genre and mostly the political reasons. If the performer or composer has a political presents her thoughts in politically, there is a lot of obstacles. Unfortunately, obstacles. It is. I can say that's the one of the main thing. But otherwise, it's like it goes like not very, very, very challenging to like in general Turkish woman composers and performers, but there are like as I say, like related to political situations.
Maybe we can think as something to add to our conversation, to share with our audience more names, just from women that you know, that you play with, because maybe we are also curious and we have the chance to include them in playlists, and to support each other and to open our ears to other experiences. So I think we will close this session very soon. I don't know if you have anything else that you would like to add to our conversation, Jilliene and Ayşe.
I just want to say thank you so much for inviting us. I was a bit nervous at first, but it's been really lovely to talk to both of you, and I hope that it was clear and made sense for the audience. But yeah, hope to see you in real life soon.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you very much for inviting me. And also I want to thank you to Jill for inviting us and collaborating us together. That's a really nice collaboration and like feeling to be together. And thank you for today talk. I hope we had a nice session.
So I take the chance to thank you again, Jilliene and Ayşe, and to thank our audience for being here. And I cannot forget my team at Teatro do Bairro Alto that work hard to make some wishes come true. And to our audience, we hope that you continue with us following our online program for now and joining us, hopefully, and if possible, in the near future. In the meanwhile, you can find and follow our proposals at teatrodobairroalto.pt and in social media platforms such as Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And you can also share today's session with the ones that didn't make it and you feel that could be interested. Soon, we will make this session more accessible with English and Portuguese subtitles. And I just say some words that I wrote before this talk, so let's see how they relate to what we mentioned today. So today, more than ever, projects start and are developed in the online domain for different reasons and desires, and because this is where we are allowed to be when we are. Some interventions are specially designed for the online time and space, using them in ways that go beyond the mere possibility of transmission, be it live or not. To this online space and time, which we now know in another way, we might grant a potential that had not been fully recognized or called to reveal before. There are those who dedicate their academic researches to the study of what is specific in the online sphere as a platform for personal, social, creative, and activism, going deeper into the recognition of its potentialities and also ambiguities. We can naively think that there are no boundaries here in the online, but the reality, if we analyze taking into account other geographical locations, can show us that this is not so. Thank you again. Çok teşekkürler. And I hope we meet again soon, here for the moment and in the outside world, if possible as well. Thank you very much, and keep yourself with us at Teatro do Bairro Alto.